Man, thank you, Kelsey, so much for sharing. We were so excited when she was like, oh, who's going to do our stories this week? And we all looked at her in our meeting and we're like, you, right? But it's just amazing to see how God is working. If we have not met yet, my name is Jamie. I'm one of the campus pastors here at Northwest University, and I'm excited to tell you a little bit about what we're going to do in the remaining part of our service here in chapel. Now, normally we'll be introducing one special speaker, but today we have the privilege of hearing from many voices. We're continuing on in our series. We started it on Wednesday and continuing today, talking about relationships in different parts of it. And so we figured with that, our team looking at it is we wanted to make sure that you were able to hear from a variety of experiences when it comes to relationships, whether that's dating relationships, marriage, friendship. Here at Northwest University, we believe in academic excellence, but also in our spiritual formation. So today, we're going to take some time and talk about it with some wonderful guests. So if you will join me in welcoming our guests today, they're going to come up here, and we are going to get started. All right, so to begin with, they gave me a swivel chair. That could be dangerous. To begin with, why don't we just go ahead and we can go down the line and you all can introduce yourselves, tell us what you do, and how you're connected to Northwest University.
All right, yeah. My name is Tyler Shores. I am Jamie's husband of 10 years this summer, yeah? 10 years this summer, so yeah. I am a local youth pastor. I've been in youth ministry for a little over 7 years. I was in college student development before that, and currently I teach a couple classes for the College of Ministry here at Northwest.
Hello. Yes. Hey everyone, my name is Blake Small, and I serve as the Director of Multicultural Life on campus, which is part of student development, and this is coming up on my fifth year here at Northwest.
Hi all, my name is Larissa Lilly, and I serve as the Associate Dean of Student Development, and I am starting my 8th year at Northwest right now.
Hey everyone, my name is Doreen Johnson. I serve as the Director of Admissions. This is kind of my first time doing this, but I'm really excited because I've been at Northwest for about 5.5 years, and I mostly get to interact with incoming and prospective students. Shout out to students coming for the program scholarship, by the way. But it's really excited to see all of you here today.
All right, so we have quite a few questions that actually some students help us come up with. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in because we want to make sure we make the most of your time. So like I said, we're diving right in with some big questions. So first of all, one of the questions we have is, what does it mean to be unequally yoked, and how should that influence dating?
Okay. All right, here we go. So, unequally yoked. So on behalf of pastors everywhere, I apologize for when we throw out terms and don't explain them very well. So this comes from Paul's letters to the Corinthians. He tells them not to be unequally, not to have their lives yoked to those who do not share their belief or their following in the way of Jesus. And so this is speaking particularly about like paying attention to who we bind and connect our lives to. So the imagery is of like two oxen that are trained to pull and to plow. And so you've taken more experienced ox and you take a younger one who might be a little unruly. You bind them together with a yoke so that the older ox teaches the younger one a particular way to plow. And so this is an attempt to take very seriously the way that relationships influence our lives, and to say that if you have said yes to Jesus, if you follow in that way, there's a particular way that and direction that your life is taking. And if you attach your life to those who do not follow in that same way, that there will be tension there that could potentially pull you off in those ways. And so an application for that is in our dating relationships, right? That is the beginning of a relationship where you potentially are going to attach your life to that person. And if it's pulling in different directions, that could be that could cause some issues in your following of Jesus and your faithfulness to him, and even in your relationship as you're determining the direction of your life. So, yeah, that's a start.
Thank you for that definition. I think what you're going to find is my answers get really, really practical. So I'm not going to go super deep with a lot of these. They really become very applicable. But I think as Tyler was kind of talking about, when you are yoked with someone who is completely different from you, or even a little bit different from you, it doesn't necessarily seem like that big of a deal when you're dating, right? Because you're like, I'm just dating them. I'm not marrying them. But what I would say is it's a huge deal. And I know I'm saying that on this side of marriage, but I was single for a really, really long time and have walked with a lot of students through dating and pre-dating and pre-marriage. And why I say it doesn't seem like a big deal now, but it's really a big deal when you get married is because your whole life decisions are made off of that. So how you use your time and your calendar, right? Like if I'm a believer and my husband isn't, are we going to church on Sunday? Are we spending time in prayer together? Are we doing whatever, right? So how you spend your money. Are we tithing? Or if he doesn't want to tithe, what are we going to do? But it's our money together, all of those things. The energy that you have, the friends that you keep, those are big differences when you aren't equally yoked. The conversations you have, the way that you guide and parent your children, and I've seen this really play out recently as I've had children. And I think what I would say to you if you are dating is, or if you are single, like, be thinking about the person that you want to marry and not the person that you want that person to be, right? Like, I didn't marry Curtis, my husband, because I had these like rose-colored glasses of who he was, right? It's like, no, that's who Curtis was, and I knew who I was marrying. And I think that when we're in college, we think like, oh, they'll change. Like, they may not love the Lord right now, or they may not serve in this way, or they might not do this right now, but they'll change. And my friends, yes, God is a redemptive God, and there is so much power to change, but you are not the person that is going to save them, right? And so what I would call you to is to pray for those people that you are maybe interested in, or that person that you're dating. Pray for them, help them find a spiritual mentor, and don't date them until they really love Jesus.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I think those are all spot on. You named a lot of my very tangible ways in which I experience tension in my own marriage and how that might be different if we weren't equally yoked. I think just to add on to that, even like creating the culture of your home, like is so important to what do people experience when they enter your home, whether it's family or friends or otherwise. And the other thing that I think of when we're trying to discern, am I equally yoked to this person? In my experience, that doesn't necessarily mean that the way you approach and experience spiritual disciplines are exactly the same, right? Wait, you don't get up at 5 a.m. to pray for 2 hours? We're not equally yoked, right? That I don't think that is what Scripture's after. And again, this is in relationships, right? It's not just dating. We're talking about business deals, partnerships, friends that are closely tied to your life, right? That's what we're talking about. But it is more so the trajectory and the foundation of your life. Is it founded in the Lord? Yeah. If you can answer yes to that, I think all the other little nitty-gritty things will get figured out along the way. Yep. But boy, is your firm foundation, your faith, based in the life of Jesus? Yeah.
I'll just quickly say that I think for me it's easy to have pressure, whether it's friend groups and other people in your life. And for me, like being in the Indian culture, there's a lot of pressure to get married at a certain age. And I'm actually past that, and I'm engaged, and we're waiting on getting married, waiting for the visa process. But thank you. But I think one of the things that it's very easy is just to simply do what other people are doing, or simply to find, you're like, oh, I need to get married right now, or I need to find someone right now. And it's okay if they don't check all the right boxes, because you know what, things will work out in the end. And I would just say is just being, like I think Blake, you said it, is, make sure that Jesus is your foundation. And God has a purpose for you. It will happen when God wants it to happen. And sometimes it really is the testing of your faith and your perseverance and your character as you wait for the person that God has for you.
Yeah,
so.
that's good.
No, and I think you all gave so many good, just practical tips and just understanding what that term means, but then at the same time, what it means for our lives and how it can influence. Again, like, God is supposed to be the most important thing in your life. If you are a Christ follower, God is the foundation, God is the beginning, God is the end. And aligning yourself with people in marriage or even those close friendships who are also going to spur you on in that direction, that is going to be how you are going to continue to keep that firm foundation in God, is when those people are pointing you to Jesus instead of trying to vie for that place that God should have in your life. All right, a couple other questions that we want to get to. So this one is a little bit on the flip side of things. So what is a way that, how can we in our relationships, how can we identify whether it's romantic or friendships, maybe toxic or damaging relationships? What are some of those red flags that we should be sure to be looking for and aware of?
All right, I'll go first. I have a few on here, and I think that these can go to either romantic or just friendships. But I think the first is, is this relationship honoring one another in some of those really practical things, right? The way that you treat one another, is it honoring one another and honoring the Lord? The way an individual communicates with that other person, but also about that person, is it honoring to one another? Specifically with dating, is there a lack of clarity or commitment? So when I was thinking like toxic, I was like, those wishy-washy relationships that are like, we're on this week, we're off next week. We're on this week, we're off next week. That's toxic. That is unhealthy. That is, if your dating relationship is on target for marriage, you can't be divorced one week and married the next and divorced the next, right? Like, you are committed. And so being aware of that, and I said DTR is a real thing. So define the relationship and provide clarity. That's important. I think another way to kind of identify a toxic relationship is codependency. And I think this comes in the form of friendships or relationships, right? When you are really codependent on someone, that's unhealthy. And what does that look like? Well, that looks like there's no other friends. I always have to be around that person. What they say is kind of my Bible or what I need to do. Those are unhealthy things. And then I think also the integrity of a relationship, right? Are you the same friend or couple in front of others and behind the scenes? And so is there things that are secretive or hidden? And if you're feeling like, if you heard about this friendship or relationship and you were like, oh, that's kind of icky, but it's really about you, like, you have to recognize there's some toxic traits there too.
I'll just add a few more. I think that's, spot on, Larissa. And toxic, is a unique word, so maybe it would help to define it, but maybe in my mind more of what might be destructive, and we might talk a bit about this a little bit later, is the avoidance of conflict. Mm-hmm. And I know that is experienced as time goes on in dating relationships and otherwise, but avoidance of conflict, at least in my experience, does a lot of things. One, it creates bitterness within the dynamic, at least on one side or the other. And when that bitterness starts to fester, at some point it's going to come out, right? And so whether that is in some type of audible, physical, emotional, whatever it might be, outburst, it's in there, right? And so avoiding the emotions of, hey, I think we're having some tension. Can we talk about this? I've seen where people just avoid it, thinking it's going to go away. Yeah. And they push it down and think, okay, I think I'm okay now. I'm going to just move forward in the relationship, whatever, friendship, and I'll be good. And time goes on, and maybe you feel like the high emotions are gone, but there's some level of it still inside. The other thing that I thought of was, and it's kind of a different perspective of what you said, Larissa, but noticing if someone doesn't have a support system behind them, so whether that is family, friends, pastoral care, mentorship, counselors, peers, whatever it is, if someone's kind of just living life on their own without people speaking into who they are that know them intimately, the result might be they're going to put all of that on you. Yeah. And they're going to expect all of those things to come from you. And if it doesn't, well, that's going to mean something in the relationship. Yep.
I actually just want to add, because I was thinking about the same thing, although Blake is probably going to articulate it much better than me. But I think sometimes when we think about red flags and toxic relationships, I think it's very easy to have tunnel vision. So you always can't see that there are red flags, especially if you're constantly trying to defend the other person, but your entire friend group is saying, there's red flags, don't you see it? So I think it's a willingness to be in a supportive community that is going to challenge you. It's going to tell you, hey, are you sure about this? And I think part of it is also to be open with your parents and your family members and people in your church and your mentors. My mentor jokingly says that sometimes the best mentor is a tormentor. It's a joke. I'm not saying to get tormentors. But I think there is something very important and very helpful about having people who are not going to speak in like an echo chamber. They're going to tell you what they think, and they're going to challenge you. I think Proverbs, it says, faithful are the wounds of a friend. And I think about that in my own life, nor am I calling for violence here, but there is something about when we are in community and it's a right community and it's spiritually nourishing community, sometimes when people speak truth and life into us, it does feel wounding at first, but that's okay because God is doing something at work there. So.
Yeah, just to underscore all that, I think all of dating or marriage, that relationship at its best is going to be situated in a broader network of community that both receives from that community and gives back to it. And so the isolation is probably a pretty good sign, right? And definitely when you get all the feelings, like it's easy to not see where something is not where it ought to be. But I would just say in any relationship, there needs to be like mutuality, right? There has to be equal self-giving, and I would just generally ask in those situations, like, where is it headed? Like, what is the end? Is there is it lopsided in terms of that giving and who is benefiting from that? Because whether it's a friendship, a dating relationship, or a marriage, there needs to be like a reciprocity in that both are bringing to the table. But yeah.
And I think with that, Blake, I liked how you said maybe using destructive relationship too, because sometimes it can be it's two great people that are with each other, but when they're together, they're destructive. And even recognizing that too, and especially the codependency comes into that, or even isolation. If you have a friend or boyfriend or girlfriend who is saying, no, you have to choose between being with me or being with these people, and trying to isolate you from others, that can be really concerning. But again, sometimes it's not necessarily saying like, oh, they're a toxic person or a bad person, but sometimes it's the combination of the two together can be very destructive, and you need to be aware enough and have that community that can hold you accountable, telling you you're different when you're with this person, or you had overcome this area, but now that you're spending all this time with this person, I see that you're falling back into it. And so making sure that none of those relationships are so secretive or isolated that your broader community can't speak into it. So, sorry, that was my 2 cents to add to it as well. So we kind of got into it a little bit for a moment, so why don't we go to this question about how do we address conflict in friendships? How do we address conflict with significant others?
Honestly, like that's where it has to start, right? First of all, like early on in our dating relationship, probably someone spoke this into us, right? We probably didn't come up with this on our own, but someone was basically like, hey, neither of you are mind readers. Like, if you have a problem, say something, right? You can't expect someone to respond or react or give you something that you haven't communicated as a need or a question or a hurt or things like that. And that's true for any relationship. My best friend in college, we kind of had this theory, like, the way we deal with conflict is kind of like the foundation of our relationship. We would say it a bit more flippantly, like, hey, if you want a good relationship, learn how to fight. Really, it means learn how you're going to navigate conflict, and you have to do that honestly, and remember that the other person on the other side of that relationship, whether that's a good friend or someone you're dating or even when you're married, like they cannot read your mind. And so if there's an issue that you see that you have to be willing to bring that out into the forefront and not just expect that they're going to respond to it. So I would say start there with honesty and openness. So.
What I said is just like with humility, grace, and courage, and I would also repeat that honesty. I think sometimes, and Tyler kind of alluded to this, is I think the biggest piece of advice that I can give is most of the time I believe that conflict actually comes from discrepancy of expectation and not just communication, even though I think that is part of it. But I think being able to share your expectations, again, friendship, dating, marriage, whatever that is. My husband and I literally every single night, we will say, what are your expectations for the rest of the night? Or how do you want this to go? Or on Saturday, what are your expectations for today? Because we differ a lot in what we want to do on a Saturday, right? And so that really just helps set us up so there's not like immediate frustration or that bitterness that takes root of like, why are we not cleaning the house like I want to, you know? But it's because he doesn't want to. He wants to sit and be chill with our family, which is great. But so I would just say, talk about expectations and express those because you aren't mind readers with one another. You need to kind of know what's going on behind the scenes. And that's one of the biggest tips that I think I could give.
Yeah, I think of scripture, I think of the book of James and this idea of, one, taming our tongue, but two, being quick to listen and slow to speak and slow to become angry. And I think one of the things that tells me is really knowing myself and how I react to anger or conflict or tension, and allowing myself to give the freedom to ask, hey, I just need some space right now, and then we can talk about this in a minute. That can totally change how the conversation goes. Just to give even a few moments of pause and breathing before you jump into a tense kind of conversation. Yeah, I think, so it's knowing yourself, not speaking out of high emotion if at all possible. One thing that's helped my wife and I in past relationships too, of stepping into those spaces more productively, is giving it a heads up, meaning like, hey, I wanted to talk about this thing, but can we do that tonight? Can we do that maybe tomorrow morning? Versus surprising them, hey, let's talk about money right now. It's like, whoa, I'm not prepared for this. The way that I function, I need to process and understand what am I gonna bring to this conversation? Where do I stand on the things? And so that has really helped us gather our emotions and thoughts and bring it more productively to a conversation of conflict.
I'll only add, I think sacrifice is something that is important when we're thinking about addressing conflict. I think about, again, I'm going to go a little bit more theoretical than practical here, but I think of, the greatest source of conflict between man and God is our sinful nature and our hostility with God. And I don't like calling it conflict because I'm very simplifying it, because a roommate conflict is not the same thing as our, what we have with God. But I think something like that is how did God resolve the greatest conflict in human history? Is he sent his son to die, to sacrifice. And I think about what are the ways that I can sacrifice for my fiance, for people at work, or for people in my life and friends and family members. And I think about those things, like what am I giving up when I come to a conversation? That requires a lot of humility when you're trying to address those things. So.
No, that's so good, Doreen, too. I was even thinking of that. We, at one point, we had a student in one of our youth ministries ask us, well, when you guys fight, how do you determine who wins? And I was like, if that's our mindset, no one does. And I think that can be true in so many ways of conflict, too, is you're approaching it sacrificially. You can't just think about what am I going to get out of resolving this conflict, but how are we going to resolve this conflict? And that makes it so you have to think about the other person too. What did they need? How did they address it? What is their personality type? For us, I'm the one that when something happens, I need it to be resolved and resolved right away. I go into problem-solving, emotionless mode type of thing, but we're gonna get this solved, where Tyler's like, no, I have a lot of feelings right now, and you don't want me to say anything because I don't know what's gonna come out of my mouth. And even figuring out what was good for us in that. But again, it's not about who's winning the conflict, who's winning the argument, because as soon as you go into that mindset, you're both losing completely. All right, so we've been continuing on. Guys, thank you so much. Everything that you were saying, I was like, oh yeah, so good. It's just so great so far. Don't worry, we're not done yet, but it's really good. So here's a question we have. So especially sometimes at Northwest University, Christian universities in general. You hear lots of fun things at our school. It was Ring by Spring. You came for your MRS degree or different things like that. But again, getting married and having that be a part of Christian life is a beautiful thing if that's what God has for you. But sometimes we can really want it or feel like it's pressure a little bit. But let's think about maybe there's somebody here today who you want to date, but you're not. What do you do? And how can you even think about how can you find fulfillment in your life and in Christ without being in a relationship? What does that look like? And again, that student that they're like, I want to be in a relationship, I want to get married, but it's just not happening right now. What words of advice do y'all have for them?
I am very passionate about this. I went to a small Christian school, Ring by Spring. I got into student development, single as can be. I worked at a Christian colleges for 10 years, single as can be. And then I met my husband once I moved up here. And so the amount of students that I saw get married, I was like, when's it gonna be my turn, Lord? You know, like, why not me? And so I feel like Northwest doesn't know me as single because I got married so quickly once I got up here. But I really do, I think the single life is so beautiful. And I was single until I was 32 years old. And for you in college, you're like, holy cow, that's like really old. And the amount of times I hear that, I know. But it was beautiful. And my husband was the same way, obviously, right? And both of us just got to live these really cool lives as single individuals in pouring out into our ministries. And so I'm trying to think of like more tips. Like, what do I do if I want to be single or I want to be dating and I'm not? I think what I would say is, this is going to sound super Jesus-y, so I apologize, but guard your heart in the fact that, like, what are you focusing on? Because when you're focusing on watching lovey-dovey romantic movies and reading these romantic novels, well, that's not really healthy, right? Because if you're just pouring in what you want, you're gonna be frustrated and feel lonely and feel like the Lord's not focusing and hearing your prayers, right? And so I think the biggest thing is just, change your focus and where your heart is. Pray for yourself, pray for your spouse. One practical, very cheesy thing I did was I actually started a journal to my husband. Because when I was feeling either frustrated or alone or like interested in somebody that wasn't someone that I should be interested in, I would just write a prayer journal to my husband. And I was able to give that to my husband on our wedding day, which is a really cool thing. Cheesy, but that's what I did, just to change my focus, where it's not just who I want to be dating in this moment, but like, who do I want to marry and how's my heart focused on that, or just the Lord and not just dating because everyone else is doing it. And if you're single and you want to talk about it, I can talk more with you.
Well, I'll just share. I think I also experienced quite a bit of singleness in my life. So went to a private university, and a lot of my friends were dating or got into marriage pretty quickly, and they started having kids, and it was like, when's this gonna happen for me? And so I think the hard thing for me was feeling the pressure of, and again, I explained, I'm being born in the Indian community. There's this, I think part of it is also even in a Christian community, you really feel the pressure of, I need to find this person. And then you start getting like your friends and family members getting you a subscription for like singles or is it Mingle? I don't know even what's it called. Christian Mingle. There's actually an Indian. There's actually a Christian Indian like dating website too. So that's what my parents got for me as well on my 25th birthday. So that's what. Yep. That's what happened for me. So, but you really feel that pressure, and it's really hard. And I think that's why. Again, really feeding yourself is what I would say, is just making sure that you're not putting that pressure on yourself, and just know that God's a good God and He gives good gifts and He loves you and He cares about you. So once we know our identity in Christ, I think we can simply enjoy the season that we're in. There are times, do not tell my fiance this, by the way, but there are times where I'm like, I want to go to sleep, but she wants to video call me. She's 12 and a half hours ahead of me because she lives in India. But it's really hard because I'm like, I want to go to bed. And so don't tell her that. But there are times where I have accidentally wished to be single a few times, but I've prayed and confessed, and I'm happy. So yeah, thank you.
Oh, the honesty.
Yeah, I think sometimes we have this mindset of like stepping stones in life, or that the grass is going to be greener over there. And so whatever that is, whether it's relationships or jobs or going to school, like, I want to graduate because I'm ready to start working and start making money, whatever it is, that mentality that I think we're fed from a young age really steals away from what's in front of us. And so I think what we're saying in some ways is not that desire, there's truth to that and there's value to that, and it's worth navigating, but there are friends and people in this community that are worth investing in. And I think in my experience in my undergrad and grad school, because I got married later, I was 29 when I got married, choosing to kind of divert that energy towards, you know what, there's some great people in front of me that I want to get to know on really deep levels, and how those have really lasted throughout my life till today. Boy, I wouldn't trade that for the world. And so I think if I would have been in a relationship and gotten married, not that there's anything wrong with that within my schooling, I would have had a totally different experience, and just one that demanded different things of me. But as a single person, boy, it allowed me the freedom to just invest in the community fully as friends that I was a part of.
Yeah, I would just say if that's a frustration for you, name it in community. Like, I think that's a good and a healthy thing to do. We all need to be known and to know others. And so if that's something that is kind of you're struggling with, like, talk about it with people that you love and that love you. And I would just caution too, if that's something you're fixated on, in chorus with what Larissa said, is that you run the risk of trying to make something work that shouldn't work, right? Maybe you will try to find, maybe you're more prone to like the missionary dating like we talked about, or aligning yourself and trying to make a relationship with someone that is not on that same connection or level or priorities as you, if that is something that you're fixated on. So yeah, pour into community and name that if that's a frustration that you have.
All right, and I know that we really just scratched the surface today of relationships. There's so much more that people would say, and so we are happy to continue this conversation. Continue this conversation with your friends. Any of us, if you have more questions or something that was said today you just want to talk with us about, we're available here after chapel. We've got time before the next one starts. Like, feel free to linger. But I want to encourage you, again, we have to take our relationships seriously, and we really have to lay them at the feet of Jesus, because who you choose to align yourself with, whether that's friendship or marriage, that's going to be some of the people who have the most influence over you. And again, are you aligning yourself with people who are going to spur your faith on, or instead see themselves in competition with your relationship with God? And that's why it's part of our own spiritual formation, is thinking through this, praying through these, and giving our relationships over to God. So thank you all so much for your thoughts and just for your insights with this. Can we give them a round of applause? All right.